Hello, everybody out there. In this podcast, I just wanted to act a little more natural. The last time I felt like I was performing for the camera, and it, what's the sense in that? It just has to be the way it is. So I'm going to give you a proper introduction here. My name's Rodney. I am originally from Canajoharie, New York. I live in a small town about 5 to 10 miles away from there. I didn't look it up or anything, but that's about how far away I live in a town or surrounding that place. And MVP, Mohawk Valley phenomenon. I live in the Mohawk Valley in upstate New York. And we're going to start my story here. So I'm going to start off when I was around 7 or 8 years old. Third grade, I moved to my grandmother's house, and I realized one morning, all of a sudden, I woke up. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak. I had basically all the classic signs of sleep paralysis. It's pretty common. And it's happened to me on and off over the years, gotten more severe as I've gotten older. I have noticed that. And so that's basically where a lot of paranormal stuff started with me. There's little things involved as I go on through my life. One thing that I can remember very vividly was that at the time, my girlfriend was there. I'll get to my girlfriend in a little while. But my girlfriend was at my grandmother's house with me and my mother. We're sitting in the kitchen, and we had the old phone that was on the wall that had a cord, it wasn't wireless. It was a cord phone. You had to stand next to it to talk to people. And the year was probably 1994 in there, 1995 in that time period. And all of a sudden our phone started ringing. And I'm standing in the kitchen. I walk over to the phone. I pick it up and I say hello. And there's nobody on the phone. It is just completely dead. There's no dial tone. There's no busy signal. There's no nothing. And my mother and my girlfriend were standing there, and I hang the phone up, and I look, and I realize the phone that's on the wall, the actual phone cord that comes into the house was unplugged. And that phone rang 4 or 5 times before I picked it up. So it's just very odd to say the least. And at that time, my grandmother had passed. And there was one thing that my grandmother always did was she would call the family every day. If you were alive, she was calling you. And it was really, really a great thing that she did. And sometimes you think, is that a message, that you receive? I didn't look too far into it at that time. I was just a young teenager. So I'll move on to my next experience. I used to, about 3rd grade, 4th grade, right in there. This is before the incident I just told you about. It was probably 1989, 1990, right in there. I was 10 years old. I had a best friend at Canajoharie School, and he had a farm. He had a big farm. He still has a big farm. Let me get that straight. He's very successful at what he does, and he should be very proud of himself. And anybody that sees me from Canajoharie is going to know who I'm talking about. They knew who my friend was at that time. I didn't have very much growing up. I had a nice house to live in, my grandmother's house, and they had a big farm there up on Clinton Road out of Canajoharie. And the plan for the weekend that I went to his house was to myself, him, and his brother were going out to build a fort in his woods. Now, his woods were not close to his house. They were all the way on the opposite end of a field. I would say a half mile to 3/4 of a mile away from his house. And my friend was the only person that had a 3-wheeler we could ever ride, and it was the best thing because we just loaded our tools up on that 3-wheeler and we drove out there and we started building our fort. And as I can remember, we're building this fort. It's just inside the wood line. It's not too far in. I'd say probably 50 to 100 feet in the wood line. And it's a good established wood line. It's the regular hardwood and spruce and pine things in there. And we had a saw. We actually had a chainsaw. And, farmers, they actually drive tractors when they're 10 years old and do things like that on the farm. We did have a chainsaw. We were cutting wood up for this fort. And we're sitting there and we're banging away with nails, building this fort. And the most ironic thing happened to us, in my mind. I haven't talked to my friend about this since it happened that day. Maybe in school a couple times after this, but what happened was we're building this fort, and myself and my friend and his brother, we're sitting there talking. What would you do? We're 10 years old. What would you do if a bear come running up out of here? Now, mind you, in the 90s, very early 90s, 90, 91, you have never any reports of bear encounters in this area at all. Just recently, this year is the first time I've heard of a bear encounter. And what's that? Almost 30 years later. That's the first time I've ever heard of a bear encounter in this area. We're talking, what would you do if a bear came up? Oh, we'd go running off and this and that. And as we're talking about having a bear encounter, there was this growl out of the woods. We did not see anything, but this growl shook your soul. It literally vibrated your bodies. And I'm interested to catch back up with these guys and talk to them about it. They still live at the same farm, and his brother lives a few houses down and stuff like that. But that growl literally shook your body. We all just took off running, right? So I ran right past the 3-wheeler. I knew I was faster than they were. That before they could get that 3-wheeler started, I was going to be in the field. And I figured if anything's going to get anybody, it's going to be them and not me. And I heard the 3-wheeler start behind me, and they caught up to me, and I jumped on the racks, and we took off towards the farm. And when we get to the farm, we ran up to his father's in the milk house, and he's milking cows, and we're like, you gotta get your gun. You gotta get your gun. You gotta go up there. There's a bear. And I to this day, I believe that my friend's father believed us. He just couldn't believe that we were seeing a bear. There's no bear sightings ever around there. But when he looked at the fear in our eyes and the excitement that was in our eyes and just trying, we were begging him to go back up there and get his gun and go take care of that bear. Now, this is the ironic thing. Years later, as I'm older now, I've heard of a lot of experiences with Steve Isdall, David Polites, Scott Carpenter, Jeff Nadalny, the Dogman guy here in upstate New York. Very great people that are just putting information out there. And now I look back at that, I can honestly say 100%, there's no way that was a bear. There's no way it was a bear. Why? Because why would something have the intelligence to growl at the same time we were talking about a bear? This wasn't a person. By no means wasn't a person. If you can get a bear to growl on contact like that, when you're talking about them, it's insane. So I also want to say this. There's nothing, his father did nothing wrong. He just didn't believe that there was a bear there. But if you have children at all and they come to you, please, if they're scared, if in any way they're trying to tell you something, listen to them. I don't think in situations, unless the child's making something up and they're just telling you with a straight face, but if they have emotions involved in that and wrapped up in it, listen to them, please. It is imperative. They're not lying. And if you laugh at them, if you judge them, if you say they're crazy, if you make fun of them in any way, trust me, it's going to come back to bite you in the ass in the end. I'll tell you that. It's going to take some time, but it will. And Jeremy's father didn't do that. Or, I'm sorry. Well, you heard my friend's name there. And my friend's name, my friend's father didn't do that to us, by the way. And, I'm sure he doesn't have a problem with me mentioning his name. He would be glad. You know what? He might say it's just a bear. I don't know. But I know how I interpret it now after the multitude of circumstances I've had in my life up to this point. And there's a lot more out there. So after this encounter, I just have to run a few more things by you guys. In 1994, I met my girlfriend. And we're still together today. She means the world to me, along with my 3 children. This is the proper introduction you guys are getting. It's kind of misplaced a little bit here, but I have 3 children. They're right here. I'm going to show you guys right here. Let me make sure I'm holding this the right way. So these are my 3 children. At that age, I could never imagine in my life I'd have kids as beautiful as this. I could have never asked for anything better than this in my life. If I were to repeat it 100 times, it's perfect. Perfect, right? So, there's just one other thing I want to go over. I got a book here. I'm going to look at it for a second. I've been trying to remember everything as I go here, and I'm just going to read through this for a second. If you guys could just give me a second, I'd appreciate it. I'll get back to you in a second here. Okay. And as minuscule as these encounters that I've told you thus far, and trust me, they're going to get a lot better. If you guys have had an encounter in this area or anywhere you are at, if you had an encounter and you have witnesses to your encounter that you did not corroborate with at the time, do yourself a favor. Write it down, date, time, description of the people that are around you, things like that, and send that information to me, because I'm going to tell you a story here in the next podcast that I do where there are multiple witnesses and we can't find them as a family. We can't find them. And this is a story that has a lot to do with just about everything you see behind me here. And in particular, you see that sickle there. Well, what would that mean? Obviously, the Grim Reaper. This is, this stuff behind me is a plaything. It's not even a plaything. It's more of the things of the encounters that have happened to me and my family. My daughter made this window here for me. But what I was trying to get to was, if you've had encounters and there's other witnesses, I am going to come out on the next podcast. You're going to hear about this. And there were other witnesses there. And the best thing you can do for yourself, just like any investigative person, a police officer or the FBI, anything like that, what do? They leave one particular thing or 2 particular things out about that encounter that nobody knows except for you and the people that observed it. And if we can get a collection of stories here on this podcast, and we can collaborate on this stuff, and someone can corroborate something that you experienced, that you left out in your story, that's confirmation for you. Now, that's not going to help any people out there that want to be trolls and collaborate with somebody to discourage a podcast, or they think they're intelligent enough to actually think that this stuff doesn't happen. Good for them. They're only entertaining themselves. This is just for you and us, like-minded people. That's kind of where I want to leave this podcast, except for one other thing. I told you there would be something pretty intriguing with this podcast. In this picture, one of these children has cancer at this time in their life. This picture is 11 years ago. And this phenomenon has to do with that in particular, and in particular with that child that witnessed something when she had cancer. Yeah, well, I just kind of gave half of it away there. It's one of the two girls. And it's tough for me to talk about, but I don't know if these things are harbingers. There's some issues too with the Grim Reaper thing. There's some incidences there that are going to become very important to you guys. I hope some people can step forward and kind of corroborate the story. I'm going to leave some things out, like I said, on that. But when a child comes to you and says they've had an encounter, don't discourage them. Don't beat them up about it. Listen to them. If they're scared, listen to them. And I was kind of a prick, not to my kids or anybody like that, but I was kind of a prick to myself in that I listen to people. I listen to them very intently. I've always done that. But in my own mind, I would say, well, I'd make an excuse for it. This is this and this is that. This is what I think they saw. They saw a bear. They saw they're hallucinating, and that's just not the case. And I learned that lesson the hard way. And you'll understand. There's so much more to tell you guys, but this is part 1 to this podcast. And if any other people out there have had an occurrence with a sickness, whether it be cancer or anything else, and anybody that watches Jeff Adami's show understands this with him. I haven't talked to him at all, by the way. I admire him a lot. He's done quite a bit. If anybody has had an experience with this stuff, this is where I'm telling you where the truth comes out, is where you guys come forward with your stories. I'm coming forward with my story. I'm giving you my heart here. And there are things that are happening in our lives that people are afraid to come out and talk about. And if you're afraid, just tell me your story. If you don't want it on the internet, if you don't want it here, I won't post it. If you want to tell your story and you don't want to put your name out there, that's fine too, guys. I understand that. And girls, absolutely girls. Please, I'm going to reveal some things to you guys that are going to keep you on the edge of your seat. And it's 100% the truth, you guys and girls. So that's that. That's the podcast for tonight. I hope you guys enjoy this. And I want to become a family in this. And like I said, this is not just my podcast. This is not just my family's podcast. And we need to work together on just getting the truth out. Steve Isdall, David Paulides, Scott Carpenter, Jeff Nadolny. These guys are at the forefront of this. And I've had my story for a long time. I've tried to tell people for a long time. And I guess I'm a little stubborn. I won't write my whole story. It's so long. If I were to write my whole story, I think they'd just pass my email up, or they would think I'm crazy. But I'm standing in front of you today. My kids, I got permission from them to put that picture on there. And they told me, go ahead and do it. Well, here it is, people. And anybody, let me just put it this way. Thank you guys for coming here. Stay tuned for the next episode. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.